what kind of TV shows you guys are into. A lot of the ones that I enjoy are highly serialized. You know what I mean? Like they tell one story over the course of multiple episodes. Now, some shows aren't like that. They're more episodic, right? Which means that you can just pick out an episode pretty much at random and probably understand and enjoy it for what it is. But for serialized shows, if you watch an episode at random without any context, you're probably going to be lost. You're not going to know what's going on. Like shows like Stranger Things or Severance or one of the OG serialized shows, Lost. So, what do shows like that do? Right at the beginning of the episode, they say something like, previously on Lost. And then they show scenes from previous episodes that'll help you understand that episode. And if you have kept up with the show, the recap is like a little hint on what's going to happen in this episode. Oh, they're bringing back that scene or that character or whatever. If not, the show creator's hope is that you won't be completely lost, so to speak. And once you've seen that little recap. Well, this teaching series that we're in is kind of like that. It is serialized because we are looking at the big, overarching story the Bible tells. Some people think the Bible is just like a bunch of rules and lists of names and some prophecies, some letters, maybe a bunch of like little disconnected individual stories. And there is some truth in all of that, but really the Bible tells one big story. And everything in the Bible falls within the context of that story. The hero of the story, the main character, God himself. And it is all about his unfolding plan to redeem humanity, to restore the relationship he created us to have, but that sin spoiled. And the best thing about the story is that it's all true. It's a true story. But due to the serialized nature of this series, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, we're going to need to do some recaps. In fact, we'll probably do something like this pretty much every week. So, previously in the story. Last week, we talked about a guy named Abraham. He was a man of great faith in God. He believed God even when what God told him seemed very unlikely by human standards. What God told him was that he was going to build Abraham's family into a great nation, and that all other nations on earth would eventually be blessed through them. And what made that promise especially remarkable was that when God told him that, Abraham didn't have any kids yet. And he and his wife Sarah were already well past typical childbearing years. But Abraham believed God anyway, and eventually the child of promise was born, a little boy named Isaac. Isaac grew up, he got married, he had twin boys, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was a piece of work. Like, he was a tricky one. He was always either like trying to con other people or being conned himself. And so God gave him like a new name, a nickname that means wrestles with God. Israel. Well, Jacob/Israel would eventually have 12 sons, plus at least one daughter that we know about. But he would have a clear favorite among his sons, as we'll see in today's part of the story. It is the story of Joseph, which is one of my very favorite stories from the Old Testament. For a little summary, check out this video.
Jacob had 12 sons, but his favorite was Joseph. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were working in the fields. Joseph's brothers resented him, and when they saw him coming, they attacked him and threw him in a well. Then they sold their brother as a slave, took off his coat, soaked it in goat's blood, and showed it to their father, tricking him into believing a wild animal had killed Joseph. Soon after, Joseph was sold to a military official in Egypt as a servant. God helped Joseph do great work, and the official was very happy with him. Joseph was very handsome, and the official's wife tried day after day to seduce him. One day, she pressured Joseph so much that he ran out of the house, leaving his coat behind. She told everyone that he tried to force himself on her. The official was furious and threw Joseph in jail. God once again helped Joseph in all he did. And eventually he was put in charge of all the prisoners, helping run the jail. Joseph had the special ability to interpret people's dreams. One day, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, asked Joseph to interpret one of his dreams. He dreamed that 7 fat cows were eaten by 7 skinny cows, and 7 heads of healthy grain were eaten up by 7 heads of dried up grain. God helped Joseph interpret the dream. Egypt would experience 7 years of successful farming, followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was impressed and put Joseph second in charge of Egypt. During the famine, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt looking for food. When they got there, they met with Joseph, but didn't recognize him right away. When Joseph finally told them who he was, they wept because they were sorry for what they had done. Eventually, they went and got their father Jacob and brought him back to Egypt. Joseph took care of his entire family, giving them property in the best part of the land where they lived for the rest of their lives.
You and I each have a story. It's the story of our lives. Who's the author? Well, God is the author of all life. But he allows us to make our own choices. So, in a sense, we co-author our story, every one of us. We have a lot to say in what direction our lives will take. Now, it is also true that other people, they have free will as well, and sometimes the choices made by another person or another group of people can have a huge impact on our story. Sometimes that impact is positive, like a great mom. Today's Mother's Day. Sometimes it's very much the opposite. That's just reality. And when that is the case, when somebody else's decisions negatively impact us, we have a choice to make. We have the free will to decide what to do with it. Like, are we gonna just play the victim? Are we gonna become bitter and resentful? Or will we learn how to grow through it? Will we keep the faith that God is still working and try to learn the lessons he's trying to teach us in that season? Joseph went through some stuff that would break a lot of people. But it did not break him. He kept his faith in God, and he did the best he could. And so God used him in a really powerful way. That's why I think Joseph's story is so relatable and so inspirational for us when we go through difficult times of our own. So let's read about Joseph. His story starts with some major family dysfunction. Maybe that's part of your story too. We're going to pick this up in Genesis 37, starting in verse 2. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Okay, there's already like a lot going on here. Like Jacob / Israel, he is not afraid to play favorites with his kids. It says he loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. And that by itself, I'm just going to say, is a recipe for trouble. And if we keep reading, we see that Joseph's status as Jacob's favorite was not just because he was one of the youngest. He was number 11 of 12. But he was the firstborn of Jacob's favorite wife. Like, Jacob had 4 wives total, and he had sons with each of them at the same time, right? And so there was already like a complicated family dynamic going on. So Jacob's favorite wife was Rachel, and Joseph was the oldest son of Rachel. And apparently, young Joseph liked to tattle on his older brothers, just like every younger sibling ever, right? And of course, the brothers didn't like that. And just in case there was any doubt on who Daddy's favorite was, Jacob gave Joseph an ornate robe. It says a coat of many colors as a gift. Just Joseph. So Joseph was not winning like any popularity awards with his siblings, and it only got worse when he started telling them about his dreams. Do you usually remember your dreams? I typically don't. And when I do, they're always like really strange. Like some people believe dreams have like really deep hidden meanings behind them. For me, I don't know. I think they're usually just random stuff. This week, for example, like one of the dreams I did remember, I was a performer like in an orchestra concert, but I wasn't sure what instrument I was supposed to be playing. I ended up trying to play the French horn, and the problem was I don't know how to play the French horn, and so here I was like in this concert, like doing my best, but I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I don't know if that has like a hidden meaning behind it or not. I don't know. All I'm saying is dreams are weird. But in the Bible, we do see that God sometimes speaks to people through dreams. I think sometimes he still does. And we will see God do that repeatedly through this story. By my count, God communicates through 5 different dreams to a total of 4 people, just in Joseph's story. So young Joseph, teenage Joseph, he has a couple of dreams. In the first dream, he and his brothers are all gathering sheaves of grain, but suddenly Joseph's sheaf stands upright, and all the other sheaves gather around it and bow down to it. In the second one, the sun and the moon and 11 stars, one for each brother, all bow down to Joseph. It seems like Joseph cannot wait to tell his brothers about these dreams. Hey guys, listen to this crazy dream I had, you'll never guess. And I think he was being annoying about it, and I even suspect he knew he was being annoying about it. I think he kind of enjoyed that a little bit, just like a younger sibling often does. And the older brothers, they definitely did not miss the symbolism in the dream. Verse 8, his brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Like, will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Like, even Jacob, the dad, like, he was troubled by this whole situation, but he didn't do anything about it. But the brothers, they were not about to let this slide. And to be fair, like when your sibling is being annoying, it is only natural to want to return the favor. Like in our house, we see that played out like every single day. You know what I'm saying? This week, we had a situation about 6 months ago. Our son Noah lost his phone. Technically, it wasn't his phone. Like, it was kind of shared by the kids, which means the girls could use it too if the situation called for it. But he had it most of the time. So when he lost it, he was looking for it, couldn't find it anywhere, he blamed Lucy for losing the phone. Well, I mean, because it wasn't in his room, it wasn't anywhere he would put it. And so Lucy, of course, was deeply offended. She vehemently denied it, and she was very annoyed by this accusation. The phone never did turn up until this week. One of Noah's friends found it under a seat in his car. And amidst all the rejoicing and, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been found, Lucy was like, I told you, I knew I didn't lose it. She was pretty smug, she was pretty obnoxious about it, and she kind of had a right. It was understandably so. But Joseph's brothers wanted to do more than just kind of take him down a peg for being annoying. So one day, they're out taking care of the family's livestock, and they saw in the distance Joseph come, and he's on his way to check up on them for their dad. And they see an opportunity. They actually talk about killing him at first. But the oldest brother, Reuben, kind of talks them down from that. But they do grab Joseph, they beat him up, rip that cloak, that coat, special coat off of him, and throw him into a dry cistern, like a well. And then, while he's in the well and they're deciding what to do with him, they see a caravan of Ishmaelites, the distant relatives related to Ishmael, passing by. They're spice traders. They're on their way to Egypt to sell some spices. And so the brothers get the brainy idea to try to make a little money off of Joseph. So they sell him to these Ishmaelites as a slave. They would tell Dad, Jacob, that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. And they show him Joseph's bloody coat as proof. But for Joseph, when he got to Egypt, he was sold again, this time to an Egyptian. And just like that, Joseph went from the pampered, spoiled, favorite son of his father to a slave in a foreign country. Can you imagine how scared Joseph probably felt? I mean, he didn't know the language, he didn't know the customs, how angry he was. Yes, maybe he had it coming a little bit. He'd been a bit of a brat, he'd been annoying, but I'm guessing never in his wildest dreams did he expect this to happen. But I want you to notice how Joseph reacts. However he felt, he does not seem to ever lose his faith in God. We don't know, of course, what exactly he had been taught about God by his family or how exactly he practiced his faith. We can kind of guess, but he had to have had a lot of respect and love for God because he kept that faith, even in these very trying circumstances. We know that because of what Joseph did next. We're in Genesis chapter 39 now, starting with verse 1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. So Joseph finds himself working in the household of a guy named Potiphar, an important guy, captain of the guard for the Pharaoh of Egypt. Some say it's roughly akin to the head of the Secret Service nowadays. Now, Joseph, he could have been feeling sorry for himself. Maybe he was for a while, but ultimately he trusted God and he did his best with the hand he'd been dealt. He worked hard and God blessed him. It says that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. So eventually, Potiphar put him in charge of his whole household, and Potiphar reaped the benefits of God's blessing on Joseph. I think the big takeaway from Joseph's story, and we're going to see this all day, is that regardless of his circumstances, Joseph trusted God and did his best. And we'll see that. We'll see that continue to play out. Because Joseph's story is like a roller coaster. It has major ups and downs. I enjoy roller coasters. In theme parks, right? I like roller coasters. Anybody else? Are there any roller coaster fans in here? Thanks, Noah. There's a few. Yeah, all right. I like the adrenaline rush. I think it's fun. My favorite part, Jen, she likes the loop-de-loops when you go upside down. My favorite part are the big drops, and the bigger the better. I love it. It's just a rush for me. But when figurative roller coasters happen in your life, not fun. Not as fun. Because sometimes those big drops can be devastating, right? And the next drop in Joseph's roller coaster comes at the hands of Mrs. Potiphar. Now, Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Like, don't think for a minute this was not a legitimate temptation for Joseph. I mean, he was in his mid to late 20s by this point. He was a handsome guy. As far as we know, he was single at this point. And this woman was throwing herself at him. Like, it would have been easy for Joseph to say, you know what? Considering everything I have been through, I deserve to have a little fun. But he wouldn't do it. Like, not only would it have been extremely disloyal to Potiphar, the bigger problem is it would have been a sin against God. Now, they did not have like the 10 Commandments yet, but they knew adultery was wrong. And this gives us a glimpse into Joseph's faith. He knew that all sin is ultimately a sin against God. And he didn't want to go there. But Potiphar's wife wouldn't stop. She wouldn't take no for an answer. And one day, she grabbed him by the cloak and tried again to seduce him. And so Joseph tore himself away from her and ran away. Like, he protected his integrity and literally ran from temptation. And this is one of the ways that Joseph did his best in these circumstances. He kept his integrity. And can I say, like, this is the same attitude toward sin, toward temptation, that you and I should have. We should run from it. Like, not try to justify it. It's not so bad. Everybody does it. God will forgive me anyway. Not try to get like as close to the line of what might be considered technically a sin without actually crossing it. No, we need to run from it. Sin in all its forms is destructive. It hurts others, it hurts ourselves, and it hurts the relationship with God that he created us to have. So, like, don't put yourselves in situations where you know you're going to be tempted. Like, if you have an addiction, if you have a pattern of sinful behavior in your life, like, you need to take that seriously. And as much as possible, avoid situations that are likely to tempt you. I mean, it's just one drink. Other people do it. Yeah, but like, if you have a problem with alcohol, you know it's not going to just be one drink for you. So don't take that first one. If you have a problem with lust, that means there are probably certain movies and TV shows you just shouldn't watch. Websites you shouldn't visit. And don't try to like shift the blame onto other people. Like, well, she shouldn't have worn that outfit. No, like, take responsibility for yourself. Yes, we can find forgiveness through Jesus, no matter what we've done. Christ forgives us through his death and resurrection. But don't use that as a crutch. Like, keep your integrity and run from temptation. And when we do that, we avoid some of the destruction sin can cause. But here's the thing, everything I just said is 100% true. But sometimes, even when we run from sin, bad things still happen. That was true for Joseph, because Potiphar's wife still had Joseph's cloak, and she accused him of trying to rape her. And so Joseph found himself in prison, like, for the foreseeable future. And again, I wonder how he felt. Like, angry, bitter, betrayed. This is the thanks I get for trying to do the right thing. Like, how would you feel? Do you ever feel like life just isn't fair? Do you ever feel like you've been forgotten? Do you ever feel like you do not like the hand you've been dealt and you just wish you could get traded in for a different set? I think a lot of us feel that way sometimes. And for people who have been through something really traumatic, like, this is their everyday reality. Like, why do I have to deal with this debilitating health problem? Why didn't my marriage work out? I was trying just as hard as everybody else. Like, why didn't it work out for me? Why can't I ever feel successful in my career? I see it happening for other people. I don't ever see it for myself. Why did this bad thing happen to me when I was younger? And it's determined the course of my whole life. Listen, I don't pretend to know the answers to those questions. Sometimes life is massively unfair. And we don't always get to know the why in this life. But remember, even when just the lower story that you're living, your everyday life, seems incredibly difficult, God is still working. In the upper story, there is a bigger picture at play. And God can work through even life's greatest challenges for his glory and your good. So when we are faced with these difficulties, we have a choice to make. Are we going to try to be like Joseph and keep trusting God and do our best, regardless of our circumstances? Or are we going to give in to despair and anger and bitterness? Like, we can choose how we're going to respond. Now, it's not easy. This type of faith is learned, right? It takes time, it takes intentionality, it takes practice. It doesn't come naturally for most of us. It's allowing God's Spirit to work inside you, changing the way you think and helping you mature in him. It's believing this famous promise from the New Testament book of Romans. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God is working in every situation for our good. Now, our good is not necessarily what we want in the moment, but it's our highest good, transforming us from the inside out to be more like Jesus. Sometimes things work out the way we want them to in this life, if we're patient, and that's what we're going to see for Joseph. Sometimes they don't. And we have to wait for the other side of eternity for all to be made right. But make no mistake, it will be made right, ultimately, and God is working through it all. This would not be the last drop in the roller coaster of Joseph's life. Like, even though he's a prisoner now, he does very well. God continues to bless him, and he impresses the warden so much that he is eventually given a lot of responsibility. He's essentially put in charge of all the other prisoners. And while he is in that role, a couple of his fellow inmates, other servants of Pharaoh, have some very vivid dreams. They are puzzled. They wonder what these dreams might mean. Well, God gives Joseph the ability to interpret their dreams. And so he does. The dreams mean, for one of the servants, sorry about you, he's going to be executed because Pharaoh's not happy with him. But the other one would eventually get to go back to work, and it happens just as Joseph predicted. But the one thing Joseph says to the servant who gets to go back to work for Pharaoh is this, Genesis 40:14. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. But does the servant do that? No, he does not. He forgets all about Joseph, who stays in that prison for another 2 long years. Until someone else has a dream. The Pharaoh of Egypt himself. This dream is about 7 skinny cows that swallow up fat cows, and 7 skinny heads of grain that swallow up fat heads of grain. It's the kind of dream that made a big impression on Pharaoh. It clearly had some kind of meaning, he believed, but no one could interpret it. Like, he talked to everybody. He talked to his advisors. He talked to his magicians, anybody who would listen. Nowadays, he would talk to a shrink. He would Google it. He'd go on Dr. Phil, but no one knew what it meant. And then finally, Pharaoh's servant remembers, hey, I just remembered. I was in prison with a guy who was good with dreams. So they send for Joseph. He cleans himself up, and just like that, he is standing in front of one of the most powerful people in the world, being asked to interpret his dreams. And here's what he says. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. He gives God all the credit to a guy who probably doesn't believe in the same God as Joseph. That's the kind of faith Joseph has. Regardless of his circumstances, Joseph trusts God and does his best. Joseph tells Pharaoh that the dreams mean that there are 7 years of abundance coming. They'd have plenty of crops, but those would be followed by 7 years of severe famine. And then Joseph goes a step farther. He recommends a plan of action. They should reserve grain during the years of abundance to make sure they had enough during the years of famine. Well, Pharaoh is so impressed with Joseph and Joseph's plan that he agrees. And he puts Joseph himself in charge of this program. He is made second in command of the whole Egyptian empire. So he has gone from favorite son to slave, to lead servant, to prisoner, to head prisoner, to forgotten, and now he's the deputy Pharaoh. He is 30 years old when this happens. 13 years after being sold by his brothers into slavery. It's a long time to wait. But now, finally, things are looking up for Joseph. But as inspiring as that is, it's not really the main point of this. Because there is something more important going on than Joseph's lower story. The famine that Joseph predicted impacted Canaan as well, where Joseph's family was living. And who should show up in Egypt one day trying to buy grain but Joseph's own brothers? Now, this part of the story gets kind of complicated. It covers 4 whole chapters in Genesis. And it's all good, it's all interesting, but in the interest of time, I'm going to cut to the chase. Joseph recognizes his brothers immediately, but they don't recognize him, like he's all in his Egyptian whatever. So he decides to have some fun with them for a couple of chapters. And they do indeed bow down low to him, just like he dreamed about when he was a teenager. Well, eventually, he reveals himself to them. I am Joseph. I am your brother. Is Dad still alive? And after the shock wears off, the brothers are nervous. Like, what's he going to do? He has all the power now. Just one word from Joseph, the brothers are gone. But Joseph doesn't seek revenge because he recognizes that God was working the whole time and he had a bigger purpose in all this. Here's what he says, Genesis chapter 45. But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace and the governor of all Egypt. Like, what an amazing perspective. Joseph saw that even though what happened to him was horrible, and God didn't cause it, he worked through it all in the upper story. God had chosen his family to be the one to bless all other nations on earth, to build into this great nation. And now that Joseph was in the position he was in, their family would survive this horrible famine. God worked through it all. And so Joseph's whole family, all the brothers' wives, their kids, Jacob, who was still alive, everybody, they relocated to Egypt, where there was plenty of food. And they would end up staying in Egypt for quite a long time, many, many years. It's really where they grew from being just a big family to a legit nation. It was so big that it caused problems for the local Egyptians. We'll talk more about that next time. For now, let's remember Joseph's story when we go through difficult times. Bad things happen. It's just part of living in a world that is broken by sin. But like Joseph, regardless of our circumstances, let's keep trusting in God and doing our best. Let's press on. And remember that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Instead of choosing bitterness or resentment, let's make choices that will develop our character and build our faith, which will allow God to work through us in bigger and better ways. Let's run from temptation. It's just destructive. And instead pursue a deeper, more robust relationship with God through things like prayer, getting to know his word better, developing relationships with other followers of Jesus, serving other people who need help. And remember that because of Jesus, we have a reason for hope in every single situation. Jesus rose from the dead. And that means that the things we go through in this life, as hard as they may be, are not even worth comparing to the future that's coming for those whose faith and trust are in Jesus. Listen, you and I may never go through the same things that Joseph did. I hope not. But we do have opportunities every single day to be faithful, to trust God and do our best. So let's be faithful.